hope that you've got all the fat food in the back that will energize you. I have said that I am not a health summit, so we have sausage, eggs, bacon, and yesterday we had an energy panel that was enormously successful, and we had brownies and cookies. I said I'm not a health summit, I'm about energy. In the Criminal Justice Summit, I'm about energy. I'm about creating warriors that are going to get on the battlefield. We have circled around criminal justice for too long, and we all are talking criminal justice. Let's raise our fist for criminal justice. Took some young kids, some wonderful young men and women that said Black Lives Matter, and they understood that all lives matter, but they wanted to wake us up. Is that not true? And I'm trying to wake you up this morning. You look like your coffee was not down yet. And so I want to make sure that you know there's some distinguished food in the back, and you might be seeing me utilize that food. But my name is Sheila Jackson Lee. I'm a member of the United States Congress, and I'm delighted to have been a 21-year member of the House Judiciary Committee, now the first woman to ever lead the Criminal Justice Committee as a ranking member since the Criminal Justice Committee and the Judiciary Committee was created in 1789. So I just want you to know I'm ready for the fight. At the same time, I am delighted to build on the leadership of Congressman John Conyers, Congressman Bobby Scott, who now is the ranking member on the Education Committee. But sometimes, to all of you who are here, and we hope others will gather, there is a time such as this. And we all want to be, for a time, we want to be the person, the Esther, that is the person for the time such as this. And that is what criminal justice reform is. And my friends, it will be us that will be the drivers, the movers and shakers, and some of our other brothers and sisters that have come from the wide and diverse community, the evangelicals and others, but I will tell you that it will be the progressives, the social progressives, that will be on the battlefield that will not let up. I hope some of you in your life, no matter what your station in life, whether you are an elected official, whether you are a person who deals with law enforcement because you are law enforcement, whether or not you've been a victim, whether your family has been a victim, whether or not you have been on the other side of the justice system, this is your time. How many people believe this is your time? This is your time. You cannot be here, oh, this is some light hands, broken hands, something's going on. You're not in your spirit. The lady in green, she's drinking coffee and her hand didn't go. So let me try to do this again. Let me try to do this again. How many people believe this is your time? And the reason I'm saying that, and I'll give a few points and turn it over to this very distinguished panel. Somebody said technology is not working. Whoever this is, I'll call you right back. Someone says technology is not working. We have voices and hearts, and we'll just roll along the way we need to. We'll get that technology working when it does. The one thing that we know that the brothers and sisters that are incarcerated are not dealing with too much technology. So they want us to get on with their relief and release so that we can restore lives. So the one thing that I'd like to say as a member of the House Judiciary Committee, to compliment my colleagues that I've had the chance to work with, and I will tell you that we have not been idle over the last period of time that I've served, because it would look like you would hear me saying, oh, she's finally going to work. She's now working after all those years. We have been chipping away. We have been passing amendments. We've been fighting back on harsh legislation, but legislation moves slowly. It takes hearts and minds to come together for legislation to make it. And so, unfortunately, we have had a series over the last 2 to 3 years, starting with Trayvon Martin. And I've made the argument to his mother, I made the argument to the Commissioner's Court in Florida when I flew down to argue for the rest of Mr. Zimmerman. Is that Mr. Zimmerman is the one that suggested that he was civil patrol and that he was then acting under color of law and he needed to get off the street. Making the argument early on, but tragically from that, we have faced a Walter Scott, Tamir Rice, Michael Brown, Eric Garner, but way before that, there was the Avenue Diablo, and members of the Judiciary Committee went to New York and held packed meetings of paying people talking about improving their lives. Now I make it very clear, when I call 911, I'm not looking for Ronald McDonald. I am looking for a professional, caring, life-saving law enforcement officer, and today I stand here and thank them as a former judge who presided over probable cause hearings when undercover officers came in and had to make the case to then Judge Jackson Lee that at 2 a.m. in the morning I needed to get into this house. I do not come with a weak background on law enforcement, but I am believing in the Constitution that it is imperative that we turn this right side up, and that every life is valued, whether it is in fact the life of an officer, a black life, or some other life. And the criminal justice system has to meet us to the point that we've got to change it to make it right. Let me give you these points. Yes, ma'am. You all will do it. Thank you, sweetie. In my own hometown, to the panelists here, recent report has come out that 100% of the death row sentences in Harris County out of the prosecutor's office are African Americans. Give me a paper bag so I can put it on my head. I walk in shame. As you well know, we can't be down at the prosecutor's office every day. We can't stay inside the grand jury room. We have to rely upon those who say they are the people's lawyers, who should be elected to represent all of the people. That's good for you. That's what we've got to do. I see my good friend here. So you all just pause just a moment. We're going to give you all the time you need, about 1 minute. But we know that we're going to get to you all. You can't do that. On the education side, the Texas Education Agency has capped the number of special needs children to be served. Another bag is on my head. We pay them. We don't know that they created this formula. They won't have that formula anymore. Amen. We're going to tear it up and let me just say. That means that the nation's average of 13 to 15% special needs children with resources, we were doing 6 and 8%. We were turning mothers away with little kindergarten children that were exploding in the classroom. Where's that child going to wind up? In juvie. And they should not. And so the criminal justice system has to look at law enforcement and its relationship. And we get to get back to community-oriented policing on steroids, accreditation. We've got to make sure officers go home to their loved ones, but we've got to learn about de-escalation. I'd rather an officer understand, back off. Let's assess the situation, save your life and save the other one's life. Tamir Rice would have been alive today if somebody had said, you know what, I'm not going to drive up, Brother Crump, on that little gazebo to look at somebody that was really 12, but they kind of look big because I can't see and nobody else can either. But I'm going to come on this side of the street to make sure I'm safe and see what is that. Let me get that bullhorn. Put the thing down that you have. Now these officers are going to tell me where I'm right and how we can work. I hope they'll tell me I'm all right. But I want to be sure that we're at a place where we can walk together. So I've got this huge notes that my staff has given me, but let me just say this. Right now, out of judiciary, we've never done this before. We've already passed a criminal justice sentencing reduction, undermining mandatory minimum, sending the discretion back to the courts. This is on the federal system to allow judges then to make an assessment. So we've busted mandatory minimum. Over the next 10 years, 50,000 people will be released. That's been passed out of the judiciary starting in the criminal justice system. We have also put in a prison reform that puts it back in your hands, training, education, counseling. counseling, parental skills, anger management, jobs, housing, etc. Prison reform bill out of the Judiciary Committee, ready to be passed on the floor of the House. We're turning juvenile justice upside down. Don't send them to juvenile. Give them an alternative. Amen. Give them an incentive to be good. Don't give them a sanction. Judge, you have the right to give them a certificate for good behavior. You have a right to send them to the circus. Give them movie tickets instead of hitting them over the head. That bill is passed. And remaining to go is the Law Enforcement Trust and Integrity Act that is going to demand and require, with the police officers coming together, meaning their unions, saying that every incident of violence must be sent in so that we can reconstruct how you have less places of violence, body cameras, accreditation, 18,000 police departments. I think some of them should merge, go away, and come into where you can train individuals, college education for police officers in making a difference. So you see I'm wound up. I might be considered fired up. I don't want these sections to come, and there are a lot of them. Everybody's on mandatory minimums, mass incarcerations. Guys, we've got to do something. And that means that once you hear these folks, you need to be down in your local prosecutor's office. Say, I'm here to have you run down how you work your office. How you hand out the death penalty if you're in a state with death penalty. I want to get involved with your juvenile justice system. What do? Just take the kids from the schools and sit them down, because as you well know, a couple of years ago all these laws were written. Don't send them to the principal's office, send them down to the juvenile center. For people who are not lawyers, when you go to juvenile center, there is no sentence. And if you spit on the floor, then you get 2 more years. You can stay there until you're 21. Friends, I can't keep coming here and I don't know by ESP that you're out there somewhere making a difference because you came here to the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation annual legislative session, that you're not somewhere going home down somewhere where you weren't before asking some hard questions. Do I have anybody that's going to do that? There's a brother standing up. Anybody else want to stand before I introduce my big friend? Somebody else. I get a few more. Few more. You can be at the PTO, the PTA, the school, wherever you're going to be. All right, I feel a little better. God bless you. I may talk a little longer, but let me have the president of the NBA, who is as well. My good friends are here as well, so let me acknowledge them, and then, that's the gavel. Before I bring you Brother Crump, I saw Terry in the hallway. She's a dear friend of mine, almost my brother, Brother Branch. But Terry McGee, National President of the National Association of Blacks in Criminal Justice, we've always worked together. Where are you, Terry? Right here, I'm looking right at you. Thank you. I saw you stand up, right? So we got some things to do. They're in the juvenile system. They are living witnesses. They've kept me. I know I've been on the run, but I have them in the back of my head. Thank you so very much. Get in touch with her, get her business card, and work with those across the nation. And the local Houston chapter of the National Association of Blacks in Criminal Justice. And then let me get Terry McGee. Is there anybody else here? And then, of course, Bailey, president of the local Houston chapter of the National Association of Criminal Justice. Thank you very much. Many of them are social workers. I love them, and they are living witnesses to the juvenile system. Allow me to, we've been together for long years than we have, and we have worked beyond the time that Dr. Reverend President Lawyer Ben Crump has been called to be the angel's angel in the lives of mothers of the movement who have suffered. And it has been his fist banging and his partners that have really raced around the country to draw lawyers and leadership into this issue. He's 5 years into it or more, and his issues are still stand your ground. But he's working with us, and he's led the National Bar Association into a emerging leadership on criminal justice reform, Dr. Reverend Ben Crump. Come on, give him a big hand.
Congresswoman Jackson Lee, I just want to come by on behalf of the National Bar Association, the largest association of lawyers of color, representing 66,000 black lawyers, judges, and legal professionals in America and beyond, representing our clients, our concerns, and our issues. And I wanted to thank Sheila Jackson Lee, who is not only a leader, she is not only a lawyer, but she's also a mother. And she used all these elements when she came down almost 5 years ago now to Sanford, Florida, and helped make the case with us to at least arrest the killer of an unarmed 17-year-old Trayvon Benjamin Martin, who was walking home with a bag of Skittles and a can of iced tea, talking on the phone, minding his own damn business, when this neighborhood watch volunteer with a badge profiled, pursued, and shot him in the heart. And the police said, because this thing called Stand Your Ground, they were not even going to arrest him. So I want to first, Sheila Jackson Lee, thank you for not just saying I'm a leader for the people in Texas, but having compassion into your heart for a little boy in Sanford, Florida named Trayvon Martin. So thank you for coming. It is hard to believe that it's been 5 years from this February. Secondly, I wanted to just conclude with talking about what Dr. King talked about over 50 years ago. And I know we're going to have a lot of great advice from this panel. But when Dr. King wrote that letter from the Birmingham jail, Congresswoman Jackson Lee, a lot of people thought he was just talking to the clergy, the people who wrote him the letter saying, outside agitators, we don't need them here. Dr. King wrote that letter, and I really believe he was speaking to us lawyers and us professionals more than anybody else, because Dr. King said, we as moral-minded people have an obligation to oppose unjust laws. We have an obligation. And I know everybody can't be on the front line with me and all the young people and Black Lives Matter, but we all have a role to play. Because Dr. King said when you see injustice, you got to do something about it. When you see these unjust laws, you got to do something about it. And when we see these cases, she talked about the family of Tamir Rice that we represented, and you saw that video, and you saw in less than 1 second that the police rolled up and the car didn't even stop before they were shooting. And they didn't have the audacity to come and try to tell us that they told him 3 times to put his hands up and drop the weapon. Now don't take Ben Crump word for it. Don't take Sheila Jackson Lee word for it. Go look at that video yourself and see if they're telling the truth. Amen? And so when you see that there, and you see the Eric Garner, they choke him on video. You see Natasha McKinney a little closer to home here in Virginia. She's handcuffed, barely naked, and they tase her 12 times and she's died. And you say, well, we saw that video, and then they go back in these secret grand jury proceedings, and they come up with these fancy terms called qualified immunity, and they come and they intellectually justify, and they don't hold anybody accountable for killing little black and brown people. And we have to say to ourselves, it's not enough that you give intellectual justification, but it's like Dr. King said, where is your moral justification? It got to be bigger than just because we think it's legal. Remember what Dr. King said in that letter. Everything that Hitler did to the Jews in Germany was legal. And just because it's legal, don't make it right. Because as lawyers, boy, if you listen to us long enough, we can intellectually justify some stuff. We can make something sound real reasonable. But that don't make it right, brothers and sisters. Because these are our children. And if we don't stand up for our children, if we don't fight for our children, if we ain't willing to die for our children, ain't nobody else gonna stand up for our children. These are our children. Trayvon, Tamir, Michael Brown. So I just come by to say we have a moral obligation, brothers and sisters, to do something. We must remember as they start this museum, the words of Thurgood Marshall. And I say this all the time because I'm a lawyer and I get it. And you ain't always going to be loved. You know, the height of vanity is to think everybody going to love you. And what Thurgood Marshall said on the bicentennial of the United States Constitution is just profound. Justice Marshall said that, and he got a lot of hate for saying it. Oh, they were pissed at him. But that's why Justice Marshall is the hero that all us lawyers stand on his shoulder. And he said that the basis of the American Constitution is simply this, that a black baby born to a black mother, the most impoverished black mother, the most inarticulate black mother, the most uneducated black mother, has the same exact rights as a white baby born to a white mother, the most educated white mother, the most affluent white mother, the most articulate white mother, just by virtue of that baby being born an American. Now he said, I know that's not the reality of today, but I challenge anybody to say that that's not the goal worth fighting for. I challenge anybody to say that that's not what makes America the great beacon of hope and justice for all the world to marvel. So when we stand up and fight for justice for the Trayvon Martins of the world, and more importantly, the unknown Trayvon Martins of the world, what we're really doing is helping America live up to its creed of being this great beacon of hope that she holds herself out to be. What we're doing is helping America be America for all Americans. So, Sheila Jackson Lee, I thank you for standing on the shoulders of Thurgood Marshall here in the halls of Congress, fighting for the Trayvon Martins, the Sandra Blands, the Michael Brown, the Eric Gardners, the Tamir Rice, the Alicia Thomases in Los Angeles, Natasha McKinney in Virginia, the Sandra Blands in Texas, and it goes on and on, y'all. I just got a call about a 13-year-old boy in Ohio. Right. So, we have a moral obligation. We all can do something. This panel is going to give you a lot of good advice. But just because you don't think that you can come to the front line, that doesn't mean you can't get involved in the NAACP, you can't get involved in the bars and girls. We can do something because these are our children and their lives matter. Thank you.
As they say, Ben, we got your back. We got your back. And you let us know how we can be helpful. Let me make one other introduction. In fact, they're hugging each other. Ron LeGrand is an institution of the criminal justice system, but a senior member and leader of the Criminal Justice Committee on Judiciary with the Honorable Bobby Scott. But he has been our friend collectively. And he has brought to my office Crystal Williams, who is the cornerstone of this event. Crystal, right here. LeBron, stand up, give her a very big hand. And the late Tiffany Jocelyn, my committee staff, was killed tragically with her brother in a car crash a couple of months ago. And so we carry on in her name. I was riled up, but I will continue to be riled up because when someone leaves you that you've loved, but who love this business of changing criminal justice laws, then you are not going to abandon them. I don't want to call the Department of Justice name, but I want you to know he's in the room. He's a friend of my daughter, but he's a friend of mine. So he's just going to raise his hand because I'm not sure whether with the DOJ he's undercover or what his situation is. But, you know, it's good when you have a Department of Justice that has the likes of this gentleman who is there, who knows where things are, and has never turned down helping us. The criminal justice system and the Department of Justice in the nation is better because of him. They are the umbrella on a rainy day. Raise your hand. You're undercover, I know, so, but we thank you for being here. Okay, let me introduce, are the materials here? Yeah, move the paperwork. Is this it?
Well, our panel's already over.
Okay, production work, folks. Samuel, you want to pronounce that last one for me?
Sinyangwe.
Sinanwe, he has done an amazing work on data science, and is going to be one of our moderators. And I'm delighted he is an activist, data scientist, and policy analyst with Campaign Zero. He has, through the years, his young years, he has been a major force on mapping police violence, and he has been across the country. He has supported movement activists. He's doing what we want to do in a federal bully pulpit perspective, requiring that data to come in. I'm delighted that Sam Sinwanwe, almost, is going to be our moderator. Give him a very big hand. He will tell you what he's going to talk about, but because I won't prolong the introductions, but he'll speak about the role technology and data collection can play. I'm already convinced, so I'm going to introduce all of them at the same time, all right? And then you can redo it. But our panel speaker, we're delighted. He is renowned across America for the work that he has done, and I always said it is, of course, a little bit of humor. We want police to show up when we call for help. Chief Kara Putney is the kind of chief of police in Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department that we want to have show up. He was sworn in June 29, 2015. He has held a variety of positions, including patrol training, specialized assignments of various ranks throughout the department. He is one of those that we look up to and admire. He was previously assigned to the Administrative Services Group. He supervised computer technology. He attended the 217th session of the FBI National Academy, and we're delighted to have you here, Chief. Is it Putney? Chief Putney, thank you very much. Raise your hand so they can give you a big hand of applause. Thank you. Chief George Turner, I've been in his hometown. I've been at events with him where he has been well received and renowned. We thank him very much for his leadership. Chief of Police of the Atlanta Police Department, 35-year veteran. He has over 2,000 sworn officers. His goal in the department is to target gang violence, alleviate aggressive panhandling, and enhance police officer recruitment efforts. He will talk to you about policing in this time. He's adamant in ensuring the department has the most advanced technology, received a number of commendations and awards from the Secret Service and Federal Bureau of Investigation. That is Chief George N. Turner. And everybody that has come is ready to present and to answer hard questions because we want solutions. Is that not correct? I'm delighted to have Kelvin Anderson, Executive Director, Philadelphia Police Advisory Commission. He is the Executive Director, appointed in 2013, worked for the agency as an investigator and Deputy Director. He's a hands-on individual, Pittsburgh native, worked as an investigative reporter, member of the Board of Directors for the National Association for Civilian Oversight of Law Enforcement. He brings that balance, and in March 2015, Mayor Michael Nutt appointed Anderson to the Police Community Oversight Board. Give Brother Anderson a very big applause. Anderson, raise your hand. Kimberly Williams Crenshaw, Director, Center for Intersectionality and Social Policy Studies, Columbia Law School, co-founder, African American Policy Forum. We're going to have a lot of brilliance and genius here. Professor of Law at UCLA, Columbia Law School, leading authority on civil rights, black feminist legal theory, and race, racism, and law. We're delighted with her forthrightness, her strength, and she, as the military sometimes say, she gets it done, but we say get her done, and she get it done. All right, thank you so very much. Deborah Ramirez has been an intimate part of a new panel appointed by the Speaker of the House, which I'm a member, only 10 members, Police Working Group. Our first field hearing was in Detroit. We're expecting to go all over the country. We're not going to come back with false hopes and false words. We want to make sure that we work to reform our police system, and let me be very clear, not reform police to the extent we want to give them the tools to be able to do what needs to be done and to be forthright, but nurturing, yes, guardians, not warriors in our society. This professor, Northeastern University, has been a leader of this aspect. She's a criminal justice expert, and she is a professor of law, as I said, at the Northeastern University School of Law. She teaches criminal justice for first-year students along with advanced courses, but she works with academia. She has been involved in community partnership-based counterterrorism programs. Yes, we can do that and stop terrorism. She has been working in strengthening relations between the American Muslim, Arab, and Sikh communities. I'm delighted to have Professor Deborah Ramirez. Kimberell Kelly, reporter, The Washington Post, an investigative reporter, superior and superb. She was part of the 2016 Pulitzer Prize-winning team for the newspaper series on the fatal police shootings, which also won Polk and Sigma Delta Chi Awards. Additionally, she is the recipient of the 2016 Salute to Excellence from the National Association of Black Journalists. She doesn't, you need say no more. Just read her article. It was an eye-opening, wonderful statement that should give us our roadmap. Thank you so very much. Welcome, Ms. Kelly here. Thank you. And then we have Jim Miles. Do I have it right, sir?
Yes, sir.
Larty, reporter, The Guardian. He is a reporter in The Guardian. We all know the courage of that periodical. Issues of policing, criminal justice, and race. He is the National Association of Black Journalists Emerging Journalist Award, a member of the reporting team behind The Counted, The Guardian's long-term investigation into police killings from January 2015 to the present day. Give him a very, very big hand. If it is not for the First Amendment and the truth sayers, where would we be? Y'all can do better than that. Give this whole panel a very big hand. Then one of my youngest stars, Iana Pradia, youth activist. Stand up, please. She's been leading a cause dealing with stopping and bullying, but she is a spokesperson to everybody. She is a spokesperson and a young woman that will never give up or never give in or give out. She is persistent and determined. She is also set, bullying video set to Christina Prairie's Human with the help of Houston filmmaker Michael Staring. She is a fashion designer. She is a person who believes in hope, love, and we are one. She's also working on honoring all of the medical doctors, which she says no one ever says thank you to. She's there with a lovely mother in yellow, and we are delighted to have them there. Will you both stand again, please? Sam, you are on. I'm going to be sort of the gaveler. I'm giving you all about 3 minutes. And I know you may go over, but I really want us to engage in the beauty of questioning. And I have a PowerPoint that I may or may not get into it. I do want to acknowledge Exodus Foundation. What a wonderful name. We got to come out through Exodus, though they are EXODOS, is up here and mobilizing people for the Time's Up, Let Them Go rally campaign for clemency of all of our brothers and sisters. Former speaker on the panel, where are you? Exodus. All right, Exodus is in the house. Thank you so very much. Okay, I'm gonna give him a special introduction. Where are you? Where's mine? Is he doing it? He's not doing it now, right? Yeah, right. So stand up. I'm gonna give you a special introduction. But he's a special person, and you'll know him in a minute. Okay? Give him a big hand. Okay, as Sam comes, let me give you some breaking news that I'm unhappy about, and I'm going to try and work on it. But we were promised that our criminal justice legislation will be out by the end of the month. I did not say who's in control of the House and the Senate. Because of squabbling and adherence to trying to prop up the person that has taken the leadership on that other side and is seeking to command this nation, There's a lot of hanky-panky going on. So I'm going to say to you that I need you to be riled up in here about the need for criminal justice reform, and I am not afraid to leave the mic, but I do want to build on what Trump said, is that every person that is incarcerated was somebody's child, somebody's baby boy, or boxing baby girl. That's right. And while we sit here, they are incarcerated, but they are somebody's family member. And that's what we should put in our hearts to get us moving. Sam, you got it all. Thank you so very much. Thank you.
So how do you follow that up?
Do your thing, brother.
So my name is Sam Sinyangwe, co-founder of Campaign Zero at Mapping Police Violence. I'm going to talk a little bit about my work. I'm not going to spend a lot of time. I'm going to jump right into the questions after this, because I think there's a lot we need to learn, a lot we need to change, a lot we need to do in order to get to a place of justice in this country.
Amen.
So, on August 9, 2014, Mike Brown Jr. was shot and killed by Darren Wilson in the streets of Ferguson, Missouri. Mike Brown's death set off a series of protests that reverberated across the nation and have sustained for years. In fact, more protests occurred since Mike Brown's death than have occurred at any period in American history. This emerging movement in the early days and months drove the national conversation to a place of really questioning what was going on. And the questions revolved around this issue of whether or not these killings were isolated incidents or part of a broader systemic issue, a pattern and practice of police violence, particularly against Black communities. And the reason that those questions continued to reverberate was because we simply didn't have the data to answer those questions. The federal government didn't collect comprehensive data on people killed by police. In fact, it took us, Mapping Police Violence, Fatal Encounters, The Guardian, The Washington Post, to build more comprehensive databases of people killed by police than that currently collected by the FBI, by the broader Bureau of Justice Statistics, by the CDC combined. What we learned was insightful. It helped to add depth to our understanding of what was going on. We learned that over 1,200 people were killed by police in 2015. We learned that there are some police departments that kill people at a rate 5 times, 10 times more than the average police department. The question was why? What is it that is going right in some places? What is it that is going wrong in other places? What can we learn through the data? And how can we use data as a tool for accountability, true accountability, and transparency, so we can open the hood and understand what is going on in police departments in every aspect of policing, beyond police shootings, beyond police killings, beyond the use of tasers, to understand other aspects of how police are interacting with civilians. Only then will we truly be able to hold police accountable, to ensure that in every interaction, justice is done, the community is treated fairly, and Black lives are valued. And so with that, I'm going to be asking our panelists the simple question: what is the biggest gap right now in terms of your data collection work? And what are you doing right now to address that gap? We'll start with Chief Putnam.
Sure. We jumped on board to the White House's data initiative to release an open data because we think it's the right thing to do. Ultimately, though, the issue is, and I think what's missing most is context around that data. And what's also missing is a deeper understanding behind the data. What we're seeing is when we see people on their worst day, there are a lot of systems that have already failed them. And we're talking about a system and a reform in a system, but most people still want to talk about the police point of that. And I think what's missing is the context of encounters that lead to tragic outcomes and how broken the system is, because we're one outcome of multiple systems that are ahead of us that are underfunded, understaffed, under-resourced, and to be quite frank, underappreciated. So what we've done is we've opened up our books. We're one of the agencies that is on the forefront of doing that, because first, I tell everybody, there's your truth, my truth, and the truth. Let's deal with the data. Let's each analyze it and figure out what the truth is so that then we can come to some positive solutions.
Thank you, Chief.
All right, I would like to just kind of echo a few points. Speaking from a 35-year veteran of the Atlanta Police Department, a 57-year-old black male in the city of Atlanta that grew up in housing projects, and really a perspective of a father of 4 and a grandfather of 7 being raised in urban America. I'll tell you that this data collection piece is really about transparency and accountability. The Atlanta Police Department, as well as major city chiefs, that we're involved in no less than 4 different data initiatives. And we'll talk specifically about those, but I really want to kind of get to where we are.
Yes.
See, the biggest challenge that we have is that we have to respect each other's opinion. I come from a perspective that this room needs. What I mean by that is I've worked on the inside of what the challenges that we have in our profession, as well as a father of black young men that have been raised in urban America. One of the things that you'll see in our profession is that you have great police departments that are doing things right. Mr. Trump talked a little bit about what happened with Dr. King. I grew up in the city of Atlanta. In 1948, that Dr. King had a concern about his son being raised in Atlanta.
Yeah.
In 1948, we hired our first black police officer in Atlanta because Dr. King, Daddy King, made it an apparent relationship with business leaders in Atlanta and said something had to happen. So when you look at the diversity of police departments, that really matters. Look at the President's Task Force on 21st Century Policing. There were 59 recommendations in that document that really drives us to a place, I believe, what I believe is the blueprint of where we're going with law enforcement in the future. And if we utilize that tool, working together with so many different voices, we can solve a problem that's happening in our profession. Make no mistake, guys, police departments around this country are still being called to handle some very, very nasty and dirty things in our society. Last year alone, we've got 1.5 million calls in Atlanta. And we are saying, and I encourage you to go to our social media page and look at our recruiting video. We're trying to recruit people that want to make a difference in the lives of folk and communities. And that's really what this is all about. And I'm so amazed, a young police officer in Atlanta walked up to me, she's here today, on her own dime because she felt impelled to be here. Been policing in the city of Atlanta for just less than a year because she chose to be part of the solution as opposed to being part of something that's not really true. And I'm thankful for the opportunity to serve as a police chief in this nation. But the problem that we face, because we are the ones on the front line, some great leaders in our profession have decided to walk away from this profession, as well as they've been run out of this profession because we stand on the front line because of decisions that are being made in cities all through America. So I will tell you, the justice system is a complete comparison of the entire process that we have to hold all folks accountable to the challenges and the issues that we see in America. So thank you. I'd love to have some real true dialogue today about what's going on in our cities.
Thank you, Chief. Back in 2013, one of the things we did at the Police Advisory Commission is we requested, I sat down with Commissioner Ramsey and I said, I need to see every shooting file, every complaint file from 2007 to 2013. That was a very large request, but we knew that we could not do our job of holding the department accountable without understanding the details of all of those incidents. As a result of that, I am now receiving, and some interdiction by the Justice Department, we're now receiving that information. I just got on my desk last week the first scanned shooting files from 2007. There are 93 of those. I'm now also a member of our Use of Force Review Board that actually makes decisions on shootings in our community, which is a tremendous change. I would agree with Chief Putney that context is important for data, but it's also important for citizens as well. Part of the problem we have now is that there's such a huge amount of information that's been tossed on the table. We need to take some time to begin to explain this at a neighborhood and a district level. I'll give you an example. We have, over the last couple of years in Philadelphia, roughly 2.2 million vehicle and pedestrian stops that have occurred in our city. We have tremendous controversy in our city around some of those stops. I have access to each one of those stops, the reasons they were done, the officers who did them, and also the folks who they stopped. But it's such a huge number at a city level. What we need to do is then take that down to the neighborhood level. So when I go to the community meetings in my city, I can show people, these are the stops that are made in your district. These are the stops that are made right around the corner for you. So context is critical in terms of understanding and putting the information out there for citizens to understand. But we're going to have to also take some time and explain to citizens how this works.
Kelvin, real quick before we transition, the data you talked about, is that currently publicly available?
Yes, it is. The complaint data that we put out in 2013 is available, and now we're working on an update of that. It shows not only the demographics of the folks who filed complaints, but it also shows the results of those complaints and the records of the officers who were subject of the complaints as well.
Sammy, can I share the 4 different data collection pieces that major city chiefs have provided and that we're participating in, so that this group will understand what those are?
I think for the purpose of this, if you could share the particular pieces of data that you've shared, that your department has shared under that initiative.
That's exactly what I would like to do. So major city chiefs and the Atlanta Police Department, we've been working along with the Police Foundation to give data stops and to go beyond what was required in Atlanta, and that is really about officer-involved shootings. We've given that data along with a number of police departments, large city police departments. Charlotte is no different. They are one of those particular groups. And then also, we're in the process of working with the Justice Statistics and providing data to the FBI concerning officer-involved shootings and encounters as well. And so what I think that Brother here to the left was talking about is progressive police chiefs. That data is available because of Chuck Ramsey, who really drove to providing true transparency in his agency. So what you'll see in police departments, they are different police departments. The biggest challenge that the Congresswoman talked about is that we have 18,000 agencies, and some of those agencies have 2 to 3 to 4 police officers in that agency, and that really just simply don't have the training or the wherewithal to be able to drive to a true conclusion.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for the question, and I also want to thank the Congresswoman for this important session and inviting me in particular to be part of it. As part of what I want to share is more of a metadata problem, and as you know, Sam, from the ability to map particular data points, you can see something if you can visualize it. So I'm going to ask everybody to stand for a moment, if you can. No, but everyone who can. So I'm going to name some names. When you hear a name, someone that you do not know, please be seated. The few people who are left standing, I want to get a data sense of what you know about the name that I've called out. Okay, so Mike Brown, Eric Garner, Tamir Rice, Freddie Gray, Alton Sterling, Philando Castillo. All right, so let's look around just for a sec. All right, Michelle Cusseau. Maya Hall. Tanisha Anderson. Ara Russer. Megan Hockaday, Jessica Williams. So thank you for remaining standing, and basically I don't ask people, it's just a way of ensuring transparency and accountability. So you can be seated. You all know what the first names were. They're names of African American men who've lost their lives in 2014, 2015. The second list was also African Americans who've lost their lives to police violence in 2014 and 2015. What's the difference between the first group and the second group? All right, so gender. That's the gap that we're struggling with. That's what we're trying to understand. That's the part of this problem that we're trying to map. That's the difficulty that we have in ensuring that the conversation that we have about what places particular people at risk of particular kinds of police encounters includes women. If we don't focus on some of these names, we're unable to tell their stories. If we're unable to tell their stories, we're unable to map what particular kinds of encounters go down when there are interactions between women and police. Now, the one name that I didn't mention that everyone knows is Sandra Bland, right? But what we don't really know about Sandra Bland is A, how common that kind of encounter is. What does race and gender have to do with this particular kind of encounter? Because we can go on and talk about what might have happened in the jail, but Sandra Bland would not have been in that jail if she hadn't had a particular kind of encounter with that police officer. And we as black women have a sensibility about what happens to us sometimes when we're having encounters with men, particularly men of a particular color, particularly men in a particular situation. So we need different kinds of data. First of all, we need to know something about the circumstances under which many of the women that we talked about lost their lives. One of the things we know is that many of the cases that we've looked at involved women who were calling the police or the police were called to help. So women have been killed in their homes, they've been killed in front of their children, many times in response to domestic violence intervention. But we don't really have a lot of data to tell us where race might be playing a role. We don't have data to tell us how often black women are killed, but we have their stories. Let me tell you, Megan Hockaday, please remember her story. She's a black woman who was killed last year in Ventura, California, 15 seconds after the police officer arrived. A woman who had been experiencing domestic abuse, police were called, they saw her as the primary aggressor, she didn't even know the police were in her apartment. So number one, remember that name to help drive the demand for accountability and information. Remember the name of Michelle Cusseau, a black woman who was killed when the police were sent on a pickup order for a mental health appointment. Rather than backing down and de-escalating, they escalated the situation, broke into her home, shot her in the heart. The police officer's argument was she didn't say anything, but it was the look on her face that made him think that he was in danger. We know something about the kind of look that people are talking about when they say that we didn't do anything, it was just our attitude that made them think that perhaps we were being resistant and that excessive force was required. Remember the name of India Kager? India Kager was killed last year in Virginia Beach. She was with a man who was a person of interest to the police. There was not a warrant. There was not a current crime in progress. She and he, along with her 10-month-old baby, were trailed for a few hours before there was a SWAT team encounter in which she ended up being shot several times. 30 rounds were fired into a car with someone who was known to be innocent and a child. Remember the name of India Kager. So one main thing that can come out of this is if we don't know the names, then we don't have a sense of what data we need to have in order to understand how vulnerable black women are. The last thing I'll say is this. When we talk about police violence, it's important for us to realize it's not just killing that we're concerned about. It's also sexual abuse. Sexual abuse is the second most common complaint against police officers, but it's typically not part of this conversation, and it's also not part of the conversation on gender-based violence. So if we recalculate this and start from women's experience, we'll be able to broaden the conversation to include some of the main ways that black women have encounters with police. Oh, and say her name. So if you don't know these names, get the Say Her Name report. It's downloadable on our website, aapf.org. If we can't say their names, we're not able to actually build a movement that includes them. Thanks.
Let me just for a moment, because that was a very pronounced presentation. Thank you so very much. I want to make sure that if you don't have to go pick up $1 million check, that you stay here until it is complete. or completed, because Sam, both of us want to see an invigorating discussion. We would hope, we know people are sermon-based and we like to give sermons at the mic, but we hope that you will give those sermons at home and try to draw from the knowledge. I'm very delighted that we have 2 chiefs of police. Remember, they are chiefs of police. They happen to be black, and so they're in law enforcement. We want to give them their due and their understanding, because the only way we can march 2 and 2 together, the only way we can answer what Sam pronounced at the beginning, is if we understand how to get to the point where we're all on the same page. I will talk later about the Law Enforcement and Integrity Act, but let me introduce a very dear friend. I wanted to make sure that I built her up, but she's commanding the state legislature in Ohio. When I say that, as head of the state of Ohio Black Legislative Caucus, they've done amazing things in criminal justice reform. She's kind enough just to be here. Alicia Reese, who is the state representative of House District 33. I want you to give her a rousing applause, because we hope that she's going to be taking back some of these elements that she can do state by state, particularly the Law Enforcement Trust and Integrity Act, to look at reforming police out of Ohio as Alabama and other places. So thank you so very much. Y'all can do better than that. Stand up, please. So you're my dear friend. Kevin Dan, I say hello. She's a powerhouse, and she's told me that there will be no loss in the column as it relates to the next woman president of the United States of America. So I'm grateful for her. All right, Professor Ramirez, we just wanted you to get inspired, and I know you're inspired. Thank you. Thank you all.
I wanted to respond to the data issue. So I'm Debbie Ramirez, and I'm a professor of law.
From people within a department. But I think that the thing that is really telling is that unless the Department of Justice comes in, a lot of police departments aren't necessarily tracking this information. Now, a lot of the police departments that haven't been investigated are. There is not a standard definition necessarily of use of force, but they are tracking this information. But the one key thing is there is no single arsenal where you can go right now and find out for 18,000 police departments across the country how much force is being used. The second thing is we talk about excessive force, and usually when we talk about that, we think of fatal force, right? And I think one of the biggest parts of the conversation is we talk about people who have been killed. But what about if somebody is handcuffed? Is that force? What if somebody pulls out a gun on you? They don't kill you, but they pull out a gun on you. Is that force being used by officers? You may not think about it. These police chiefs know, because they're looking at these statistics and calculating how often their officers are doing these things. And it's not standard across the country. It's not standard in how police departments define it, and it's not standard in how it's tracked. So how are you supposed to know? You may have a police department that there were 5 fatal killings, say for instance, in a year. But what happens if you had 1 million people that were handcuffed falsely arrested? What if you had people who, there was a Department of Justice investigation where they went in and looked at a case and they said, well, the officer wasn't shooting or killing people, but we found that in a lot of instances, he was using a baton and beating people with his flashlight. Is that a problem? So the level of force that is being used by various officers is something that police chiefs are looking at across the country, but that information is not necessarily readily available for the public, and it's definitely not kept necessarily on a national standard. Another second thing, I did a story with a coworker on police prosecutions. What happens when officers are actually charged? Well, the thing that we found out that in spite of having thousands of fatal police shootings, it's very rare that an officer actually gets charged. And I'm kind of a cynic sometimes, and so when you see these new cases on the news where it seems like the most egregious case, chances are that officer, the chances that they get charged are not very high. And once that case goes to court, what you'll often see are downgraded charges from the initial charges, and the chances of that person actually getting convicted are pretty low. And so we wrote a story saying essentially you have all these fatal shootings and really they're not really resulting in convictions. But where is the national data set that shows what happens to these cases? I haven't found it. Have you found it?
No.
So,
It does not exist.
so on a federal level, it doesn't exist, but I will invite you all to visit the counted
Wait, you're next. No.
police database.
I already
But
plugged you.
we'll get there.
We'll get there. I plugged you.
And we want you to be part of the questioning, so are you wrapping up, Ms. Wong? We appreciate you.
I'm definitely saying, but I think
We
for
love you.
for police prosecutions, you don't have that information unless you're going to call the police department, send a FOIA, and send a check to a clerk who's going to give you that information. So there's a lot of information out there that it's not held at a national level.
Give her a very big hand.
So,
Sam's going to take over the
Yep.
question and answer, but we're one person away from that. And we have eviction notice papers for this room. And I told you I wanted you to be vigorously. If you're not at the mic, when I count down, that means that we've got everybody that wants to ask a question, people that have a light that comes on and I've shut it down. You'll have to get the brain light on another occasion. There are 2 mics. I'll give you a few minutes. As I do that talking, let me acknowledge Tamara Bell, a civic leader in Houston, Texas. Let me acknowledge Claude Cummings, a major leader on criminal justice reform through the Communication Workers of America. Vice President, there's never a time when we call upon Claude to do something to help in some of our fights that he is not there. Give him another hand. And then let me ask Kathy Griffin to stand up. Let me tell her story. This is an ex-prostitute. She has brought me into her fold and dealing with women. I wanted my sister over here, Crawford, because of the conditions, many conditions that women are in. And as you well know, a lot of incarceration comes through that business. But she has turned the criminal justice system around in Houston, Texas. She needs to be a model for the nation and the Department of Justice. Let's give her a very big hand. Catherine Whitlock. And see a number of other friends in the room. You know you're not going to let me say hello to everybody, but Mr. Womack and Ms. Cynthia here is head of the Black Legislative Caucus in Louisiana. So we're glad to see that you're here. So, okay, it's shut down. We hope we get through to you, but you may be doing some one-on-one networking. All right? The Guardian is on. It's shut down. And so the gentleman with the gray suit pontificating there in the back or thinking, raise your hand. You're it? You're it? Is the person with a white hat behind, on the line? Anybody? Yeah, move away from that line. Get the food quickly and move out of that sight. There you go. I'm sorry. Last one is a yellow jacket. Okay. No more. Thank you so very much. And I hope you all stay. Where is my great, oh, okay. I'm going to make sure that he's here.
all right.
All right. The Guardian goes. We didn't cut you off. Thank you, sir.
All right, I'll be as brief as possible so we can get questions in. I did want to touch briefly on what Deborah had mentioned and Kimberly mentioned, that in our counted database, so there is no federal version of this. There's no government-sanctioned place where you can go to see the current status on all of these different cases. But I can tell you that from 2015 to present, on our interactive database, we do keep track of the current status of all of these cases. And actually, an investigation that we did earlier this year, we discovered that in about 1/6 of the times when officers are acquitted or cleared in a fatal shooting, there's no public announcement whatsoever. We're tracking them through media reports, and there's often a very small 50-word to 100-word story in a local newspaper saying that this is what's happened, or the bigger departments will do a press release. But some substantial amount of the time, 1/6 of them, there's no announcement, and we had to literally call every police department that had been involved in a fatal shooting in 2015 and ask them what the status was before we could find that out. But in our database, we have number right now 485 officers from 2015 incidents who've already been cleared, and you can sort of match that against 2 who've been now convicted of crimes for 2015 incidents. So that gives you an idea of some of the scale. But just to go to Sam's sort of broader question about data and some of the challenges that we face in collecting it and where the gaps are, I think the ultimate thing, coming from the perspective of a journalist, the beauty of data journalism is that you assemble the data, you do all of this sort of grueling work, and then once it's there in front of you, you can pull out all of these things that you wouldn't have thought of, that you wouldn't have realized, that you wouldn't have had any reason to investigate until you had that data. So it's crucial that the data be accurate, and so you're really trying to avoid false positives and false negatives. Now, as journalists, we're pretty good at eliminating false positives. So if we hear that someone's been killed by the police and we call them and they say, nope, I wasn't killed by the police, we don't put them in the database. It's very simple. It's a lot harder to, believe it or not, that did happen. It's a lot harder to know about the cases that you're missing. And so one of the things that we embarked on with our project was that we wanted to capture not just fatal shootings, but fatal encounters with the police sort of more broadly. Because when you think about some of the cases that have ignited protests and ignited outrage, like Eric Garner, like Sandra Bland, these were not cases of shootings. These were cases of someone being in the police custody and then turning up dead, and us wanting an explanation for why. Those incidents are much more difficult they don't necessarily make the news in the same ways that a shooting does, in the same ways that a shooting gets the local crime reporter out and gets them asking those same sort of standard questions. So those are harder to find, and it's taken more digging. So having an arrest-related death, a mandatory arrest-related death component in the federal government from the Bureau of Justice Statistics that is telling police departments that they need to report these incidents when people die in their custody is really crucial, because we've found cases of certainly of like taser use and just sort of general death in custody 4 months after they happen, because it wasn't in the news and no one was talking about it, so there was no way for us to know. And so as confident as I am that the data that we've collected is strong and is capturing a really useful snapshot of what's going on, deep in my heart I know we're missing some, because it's just not possible that all of these cases in small locations with small newspapers who may not be keeping track of this are going to get it published.
Thank you so very much. And give all the panelists a very big hand. We have 2 more presenters. Now we're going to do the questions first. Be as loud as you can. And we may have to get some of you in writing, but go ahead, sir. That mic, is that mic now working?
Yes, it is.
Okay, introduce yourself and quickly, sir.
How you doing? My name is Daniel McCrimmon. I am one of the co-chair members of Coalition of the Minds, basically a group of collectives brought to bridge the gap between what people know and what they don't know. Pretty much, you guys' programs, we try to get that to the public because there seems to be no database where the public can go and see what's happening in their community. Sorry, I apologize. So to the police chiefs, what can we do, or what can you guys do to prolong the training period for these police officers, that they have more sensitivity training and things of that nature?
Well, our state, no different than most states around the country, has our post certification gives our state mandate our training. The city of Atlanta exceeds the post recommendations twice. So our post certification is 10 weeks. We go 22 weeks in our classroom setting, and then an additional 12 weeks in field training. We do things specifically like CIT training. 25% of all the data that you talked about, the Post and the Guardian, dealt with mental challenged individuals. So we have to make sure that we provide tools to our officers so that they can deal with those challenges that they're being called to deal with. And so our training is, I think that our incentive around training in our state is significant. Now, our state is just really very minimal, but we exceed that significantly.
Thank you. Let me go on to the next question, please.
Good morning. My name is Wes Bellamy. I'm the Vice Mayor of the City of Charlottesville, Virginia. I'm also my point is to the State Board of Education for Virginia. One question that I have is when we look at policymakers, and I don't know if I have the opportunity to speak to individuals like you again, but what can we do from a local elected official perspective to help solve this issue other than, you know, town halls and other than meetings at churches? Like, we just hired our first black police chief, but we got to do more than that. So if you have any insight on what we can do, it'd be very much appreciated.
Yes, sir, you might not like it, but which is okay. I'm about to get on the plane. My recommendation is it has to be more substantive, because a lot of the politicians want to give it lip service, and the mission should be about breaking that cycle that creates criminality, and the outcome should be about connecting people. Our drive now is to get internships for the summer. For some of the people that we divert, we don't give them that first offense. We take the report, we get them life skills, job skills, and then we get them employed. What I'd like to see is politicians step up, connect the public sector and the private sector to do that work, so at the end of the training, they're jobs, because most of the people going through them, 95% of the people going through our diversion program, there's about 900 kids a year, y'all, look just like me. So put your money where your mouth is.
And then one other thing. Participate in the legislative process. We talked about training for police officers in our states. If we're not pushing that button, you guys have the opportunity to say we need to have more diverse training. We need to be talking about how we de-escalate. And if agencies and departments are doing this individually, the states should be forcing this throughout these 18,000 agencies.
Absolutely.
Sam,
thank you, brother.
Let me do this as Sam speaks. I want to take note that Chief Putney and Chief Turner were both part of the White House Police Data Initiative Agency participants, so they come with great expertise, and I think that you can make them your own consultants. I'm sure they take a phone call for you in your leadership role that you have. Thank you. Maybe they know the person you just hired, I'm not sure, and that person can reach out as well. I think we're on this side now. You can speak loud. Let me just say this, there's a lot of folks standing at the door, there are a lot of seats. We are not crying fire in a crowded theater, so we'd love to have you sit down in these empty seats. We get ready, but this is a great crescendo ending, and it looks like you'd be more comfortable in a seat. Rather than, if they cry fire, we'll let you get out quick. I think it's you. Thank you.
I had a follow-up question.
Hold it, just a minute. That's right.
So I just had a follow-up question on Wes's question in terms of what types of policies.
To the Vice Mayor, can you listen?
Yeah, so this goes to the two police chiefs.
Okay.
What plan have you proposed, or do you plan to propose specifically to reduce and ultimately eliminate police violence within your department? And what sorts of components of the plan exist, and what are sort of like the timelines and metrics you're using to evaluate success?
Can I start?
Sure, please.
Let me say this. First of all, I talked specifically around the President's Task Force on 21st Century Policing. I think that that's a great blueprint for where we need to be going for us advancing public safety and policing in our country. 59 recommendations there. There are 15 cities that was chosen out of 18,000 agencies to really push this model forward. The Atlanta Police Department is one of those 15. And so what we have to think about is how we push towards those recommendations and where we are. We have to grade ourselves first and give timelines on when and how we're going to achieve those metrics. I'm a data guy also, and the truth is, when I wake up, I read the paper, but I also read the number of violent actions that took place over the 24-hour period in my city. Give you some facts. We talk about the challenges around violence in our cities. 18% increase in violence in major cities last year, all over this country. We're tracking 15% higher now. And the truth is, guys, those folk look like me.
Yep.
Out of the 81 folk that were murdered in my city this year, 79 of those folk are black folk. And let's take it forward further. We've made 61 arrests for people and charged them with murder. Who do they look like? So we've got a whole lot of things that we can talk about, but I come from a real perspective. So I'd love for us to have some real conversation.
Real quick about the policy change. What we've done is a paradigm shift. We've made our core mission in the area of use of force about sanctity of life. I could tell you a long story about my history, and I didn't like cops at all, so it's amazing. It's not my plan, it's God's plan that I'm here anyway. and I appreciate that. But what we have to do is connect on a human level. So we talk about the sanctity of life. We talk about de-escalation and communication. We talk about conversation over confrontation. That's at the core of the policy, so we frame it in that context. And then we have some researchers from UNC Charlotte who are helping us quantify what the best characteristics of our good cops who come on and who remain, who we retain, so that on the front end, we can better assess people, not just based on their credit worthiness and their lack of a criminal history, but on their character. That's what we're doing, and that's the policy implications that we're trying to quantify.
Thank you, I appreciate that, and I think it's important in these spaces, oftentimes when we talk about police violence, it turns into a conversation about crime in our communities, and I think both of which are really important issues to address. It is important to note, when we do look at the data, that there is no correlation or relationship when you look at it from a national level between violent crime and police shootings. So they are indeed statistically very different issues that require different solutions and their own plans that are distinctive. So I just want for folks to keep that in mind and why the data is so important to collect so that we can ensure that folks are being held accountable to doing both at the same time. I think we have a question over here.
My name is Tamara Lanier. I'm the Chief Probation Officer in the state of Connecticut. I'm also the NAACP Criminal Justice Chair for the state, as well as a member of the Connecticut's Racial Profiling Prohibition Board. And I wanted to say that data, while we have been collecting data for the last 6 or 7 years, there have been 3 reports submitted. And data, it's a beautiful thing, but the problem is, no matter what it says, the police will dispute it. When you tell that police department that the data suggests that they're profiling minorities, they'll say there's something wrong with the data. It's a beautiful thing, but what we have to look to is police officer accountability. In the state of Connecticut, what we have now is the ability to decertify an officer for misconduct. The gentleman on the panel, he talked about POST, the Police Officer Standard and Police Training. If you pull an officer certification, he can't work. We've had issues where officers have killed people, have planted drugs on people. They've gotten terminated from one police department and went on to another to get a job. So we have to find a way. The data is great, but we can't move away from accountability. And the other thing, we have registries for officers with misconduct. We have the ability to track taser abuse now, and there was a report that was just released 2 or 3 months ago that talks about the disparities in taser use. So the data is great, but then after we have the data, what do we do with it? And again, it's not the be-all end-all because the police will never own it.
Thank you so very much. I think some of the chiefs should answer that. I know we've got you right on the spot, but also the oversight. Yeah, go ahead, Chief.
Yes, as far as oversight, we've had a Citizens Review Board since 1997, so there is external review. But as to the data analysis, we don't get involved in that. That's why we hire universities to do that. And because you're right, forest for the trees, if I'm interpreting the data, I'm going to highlight what looks best for me. So we actually have people who come in and do that assessment who are actually trained researchers. Very good point, ma'am.
Oversight.
Go right ahead, sir.
Yeah, I would just thank you for bringing up certification. In Pennsylvania, for example, the only officers who have been decertified are the ones who have cheated on their promotional tests. So the standards for certification are absolutely critical in order to hold officers accountable. I want to thank you for bringing that up. Absolutely.
Hey, how you doing? Joe Sampson here with a local organization called Shop Talk Live. My question is, as we assisted the local chapter of NAACP with addressing issues with the police department, we found that, especially in the state of Maryland, that there's an Officer Bill of Rights, which allows an officer 7 days to provide a response to an incident where the member or the victim had to provide an initial response immediately. Is there any initiative overall that lessens that time? Because what we found is when a person has 7 days to respond to an incident that they are, that was brought about for them, then they have 7 days to work on a response that later on exonerates them from whatever incident occurred.
Well, just really quickly, I'll talk to you specifically about what we do in the city of Atlanta and the state of Georgia. The two of us, we work for right-to-work states, and we don't have a very strong union process in our city and in our state. And so ultimately, that's not a Bill of Rights that our officers are afforded.
Absolutely.
We investigate our officers, and we turn all of our outside shootings over to the Georgia Bureau of Investigations to deal with those as an outside entity. Now again, if you've not looked at the President's Task Force on 21st Century Policing, it really talks about what is the best model to really bring to clear directions on what and how we need to survive as it relates to police and citizens' legitimacy and the way we operate as police departments. But quite frankly, what we do, we send that investigation out outside as an outside independent agent look at it. We also have a citizen review board that look at all of our shootings as well. I'm telling you that 65 police departments, which represent major cities, and those cities are doing things right. We have to think about some of these Fergusons and small cities that really don't have the resources to be driven in the right direction. This data initiative from the White House and the Statistical Office, all of that is, I believe, it'll give us more clear data on what's going on with our officers and what happens after they are involved in an encounter. That information should be clear, and we should be able to access it. And so we have an open portal through this network that allow you to have access to all of our data in the city of Atlanta.
Same with us, it's the difference between criminal and internal. We're going to compel you to give that statement immediately on the internal investigation. On the criminal, all protections would apply. So again, right to work states are a little bit different, and unions have negotiated contracts that are absolutely in the best interest of the officer. We're lucky not to be in a state that ties our hands as much.
I'll give you one other point too about that. So what happens previously, I've been a police officer for now 35 plus years. We never would move forward with an administrative investigation if there was a criminal investigation running simultaneously. That has become a thing of the past. Absolutely. In progressive agencies. First of all, when you start talking about moving forward with an administrative action, we're determining if an individual violated our policies. Has nothing to do with a criminal action. If we move forward with that administrative action and we see cause to discipline that officer for the actions that he violated our policy, then we can deal with him with a disciplinary action. And so you'll see around the city, around the state, my good friend Eddie Johnson, who's now the superintendent in Chicago, move forward and strip the police powers of their officers that they had. That is the maximum he could do at the time because of the strong union state. Now my situation is different in Atlanta. We had a shooting that took place in our city, and it was clear through the administrative action that the officer violated our policy. I terminated him in 10 days. So.
Thank you very much. I think we're on this side over here. Thank you.
Renelle Perry, Chicago West Side NAACP. So let me respond to your comment about Chicago, because we're the third largest city. So right now, we have a fraternal order of police contract that says that after 5 years, all police data will be eliminated. So my question, as you are looking at collecting this data, how are you going to address that issue? Secondly, you comment about Superintendent Eddie Johnson, who's from Chicago. Right now, he is not allowed to fire those police, as you just stated, because the FOP contract says that he cannot fire them. So as you're looking at investigations, are you looking at major cities, how the Fraternal Order of Police contract impedes justice from being served? All right. The last question is that, are you looking at, as Chicago is an example, we have 5,000 citizens complaints. Only 1,300 go to the independent body. The other 3,700 go back to the Bureau of Internal Affairs within the local police department. We paid out $500 million over the last 10 years, and we had less than 1.5% of those officers be convicted.
So real quick, I can answer your first question around the FOP contract. So we did an analysis of the 100 largest cities in America of their police union contracts which we received through Freedom of Information Act requests, and we reviewed each and every one of them and came and identified all of the types of provisions in those contracts that are barriers to accountability. You can go to checkthepolice.org and see for your city exactly what types of barriers are there. We're currently working on model police union contract language that doesn't include those types of barriers, as well as identifying all of the cities that are currently negotiating contracts so that communities can have a better voice at the bargaining table.
Well, I guess my point is you're going to have to do, and this is where I hope Representative Sheila Jackson Lee will come to Chicago, because just so you know, in order to maintain the history of those officers, we have to introduce legislation at the state level.
Yes.
So it's not just a matter of saying we've looked at it, we've identified it. We need you to let people know what are the action items that they need to take.
Well, can I say this, Congressman? I think what's going to happen in the Chicago situation, those files will never be eliminated because the Justice Department is investigating that city.
Let me just comment there real quick. So what happens, the Justice Department said that we will put it on hold, but the only way that those records will stay is if we have a House Bill 6266 that we currently have in the Illinois State Legislature that would change the law. Otherwise, if we met with the DOJ, once they leave, the records will be gone. So we just need to make sure that you locally look at what your FOP contract says and then work with your state legislature to see what type of policies you need to change. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
There is, I think Professor Ramirez wants to comment, and we're moving on, and I just want to answer it. Go ahead, Professor Ramirez.
I just want to say there is a new idea out there about police accountability, which is personal liability for insurance officers.
Speak up, still we can't hear you.
Maybe I'll use this one. Thank you. So the idea is that every police officer, as a condition of policing, carries personal liability insurance, that the base rate is paid by the department itself, but that if there are any increases in the premiums due to risky police behavior, the police officer has to pay that, and they would be priced out of the market. So it's like your car insurance, okay? All of you know that if you engage in risky behavior on the road, if you drunk drive, right, or if you kill someone with your car, or if you engage in violence, then your insurance, it's not like they're going to say you can't drive, they're just going to say the cost of your insurance is really high. So the same thing could happen with police officers, where if they engage in risky behavior, their premiums go up, they have to pay the differential, and now you have an independent actor, an insurance company who is supposed to assess risk and does assess risk in other situations, assessing the risky behavior of police officers and counting it. And as for the money, you say Chicago pays out. The problem is that the city right now pays that out. It doesn't come out of the police department budget. It doesn't come out of the police officer's pocket, right? So how about if we realign that so that the money is paid by the entities that are responsible for the behavior? So the insurance company would realign that, and it would be an economic insurance model for justice.
Wow. Thank you very much. Let me, I think we were, let me just say the police working group, of which one of your hardworking congresspersons is on, Robin Kelly, we are trying to get to Chicago. She has been very strong in pushing for it. As I indicated, this is not a paper tiger, and hopefully some of those issues will be brought to the Congress that really makes the laws, that sets the tone as the federal bully pulpit for the nation. So thank you very much. I think we're over here. And I'm going to try to get you all to wind up faster, please, without, so just...
Yes.
All right.
My name is B.J. Sampson from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I stand before you because I'm a therapist.
Okay. So let me do this.
My concern is on data.
Hold on, sweetie. Hold on. I need you guys to take cryptic notes because I'm going through all of them and then you're going to respond. Okay? So, you know, you can make notes. The lovely lady in the gray and black. Go ahead, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. My focus is on collection of data for those who have mental illness. And if you're going to revive your collection, please include those individuals who have mental illness. I literally have a loved one that got off the bus 2 weeks, robbed 2 banks and 2 stores. He has a mental illness that was never taken care of when he was incarcerated.
Yeah.
So, in your data collection, I ask that you identify those that have mental illness that were not subject
hurt while they were incarcerated.
Absolutely,
Thank you.
dear. Thank you. Yes, sir.
My name is Everton Blair. I'm a fellow of the White House Initiative on Educational Excellence for African Americans. My question pertains to the capacity for these smaller cities, like the Ferguson and the Baton Rouges, to actually increase their capacity to even collect data to begin with. Because I'm appreciative of the voices of Atlanta, Charlotte, Houston in the room, but we know that this criminal justice issue is as much a small city issue as it is a big city one. So I'm curious to hear what we can push for nationally to kind of shore up that gap for the financially strapped small cities.
Thank you very much. I'm going to be part of that answer as well. Yes, sir. You guys got notes? Yeah. Money for, because I know the White House Initiative had some thoughts about that. Yes, sir.
My name is Quincy Sayers with the Institute for Economic Justice right here in Washington, D.C. And I wanted to hear more inclusion about the role of prosecutors and judges and the misconduct or lack of accountability on the part of law enforcement.
Thank you. You said prosecutors and judges, sir. Thank you so very much. Yes, ma'am.
Hello, my name is Depelsha Magruder. I'm founder of Mom United. Moms of Black Boys United is a coalition of more than 140,000 moms from all over the country who are coming together to partner with all of you to solve these problems. My question is, has there been any legislation proposed that will require all 18,000 police agencies to collect the same data by demographic, by location, by police officers, so that we have a national database where we can type in an officer's name and see their record, and they can't just move around from city to city? And I want to know, what are the barriers to making that become a reality? I know funding is one, but how can we make that happen?
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I'm Tamara Bell, and one of the things I was hoping you all would bring up in your data collection is how it has increased with the privatization of prisons. Because prisons are now for profits, and because the public politicians, the judges, and the prosecutors get so much money for prisoners, especially in Louisiana and Texas, as the economy goes down, more prisons are being built. How is that affecting the rise in the people who are being incarcerated? Because that's a problem that if we don't address, we're not going to solve any of this, because that's just a new form of slavery. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, sir.
Good morning. I'm Vince Robinson, a native Washingtonian, born in 1948, live in Baltimore, Maryland. The Department of Justice met with us on September 9th to discuss the lawsuit. Congressman Elijah Cummings, Senator Carter, NAACP, ACP, and earlier met. But we found that the police are denial of how they treat citizens throughout the United States. The Department of Justice has shown that throughout the report in Washington, D.C., that there is good policing going on. I'm glad you mentioned that out of 65 stations, out of 18,000, there are some good things going on with police. So we put together a community capacity building partnership proposal, submitted to the Baltimore City Police Department. They have not reviewed it, accepted it from the citizens, and I want to bring that to you all, because we can rebuild our communities together. God bless you all.
Thank you very much. Let me take 2 points, and then I'm going to yield to our colleagues here very quickly. I want to bring to the attention of all of you, we need you to be pushing the Law Enforcement Trust and Integrity Act, which is introduced by myself and Ranking Member John Conyers. It is a framework to begin many of the things that you've discussed. One of the things that's very near and dear to my heart is accreditation. As the chiefs have said, as the authors have said, 18,000 police departments. Can you believe it? Some are 1, some are 2, some are thousands. And so we first want to start with developing additional national standards for accreditation. All the things that you said, how police treat citizens, citizens treat police, de-escalation or escalation, all of that as standards upon which you can be legitimately credited as a working police force. Dealing with, working with organizations such as Law Enforcement Association, labor and community-based organizations, let you all get your foot in the door of what you're thinking of that police should be doing, developing best practices, and then giving grants to help local police departments get to the point that they can be accredited. That's one aspect of it. Law Enforcement Development Program, which has been my cause, and that is programs to help police develop in a better manner, to develop best practices in areas such as effective training, recruitment, hiring, management, oversight of law enforcement officers. Refresh your memory of the retired reserve officer in Arizona, a rich person who was out because his friend wanted him to be a police officer, and he's packing a gun, and he shoots somebody dead because he was attempting to pull his taser, and he pulled the gun. There's a dead man. What are the standards? And I want to help the police officers like this young woman here, first year, 33 years old, college education, who's in it for the goodness of serving. And you do that by enforcement of development program. Administrative due process requires the Attorney General to conduct a nationwide study on laws, rules, or policies that pertain to due process rights of any law enforcement officer in the state, which by correlation, it deals with how the victim or the person charging is treated as well. That was added because we're trying to draw police and community together. Federal data collection, I won't go with that, that's the whole process of data collection to enable an agency to reach substantial compliance. A law enforcement agency may rely on the assistance of public and private colleges, universities, nonprofits, community-based organizations, money to all of you to help them collect the data the right way so that you're not in the dark. Timely justice for victims and families. So we're not leaving you in the dark. That's part of the bill. Body-worn cameras for law enforcement. The role of construction, the provision clarifies that this act does not give rise to any cause of action against any law enforcement officer, etc., based on the best practices, so you do a separate or other standard shall not be construed to establish a standard of care. That is because we don't want to write the legal interaction between the courts and the victim and the law enforcement. So we're not going to stop that victim from suing based upon anything in this legislation. The active shooter training, protection of law enforcement officer privacy, another law enforcement element, and then establishing the Center for Task Force Training, and then Death in Custody Reporting Compliant Act, because we have a bill, a law, but it hasn't been complied with. That is, if someone dies in the custody of a law enforcement officer, as some of our panelists have said, we don't know whether we get all the information. We need to get all the information. So it answers somewhat the questions. Police are in denial, the issue of data collecting. Just wanted to give you this. Have on your mind Law Enforcement Trust and Integrity Act. So, ladies and gentlemen, go for it, or which ones that you want to answer, and identify the questions that you're answering. Thank you.
I'll talk a little bit about, I'm sorry for jumping straight in, but I'll talk a little bit about the mental illness issues. Prisons cannot and should not be the source for diagnosing folk that are having mental challenges. I'll give you a quick analysis. In the 60s, we had more than 600,000 people mental institutionalized. We have less than 40,000 people institutionalized now. But they are institutionalized. They're in our prisons.
That's correct.
And they are in our county jails. And the fact is, we're, as first responders, we're having to respond to those challenges. That can't be the method. Then the other piece around how we fund smaller police departments to do this work better. We have to think about all of the, I call, federal mandates that's already pushed down to cities. If you don't think, this deputy mayor is not in the room any longer, perceive that body cameras is a mandate from the federal government that he has to supply. Our body camera network is a $5 million purchase. It's worth it, I believe it, but our city was able to maintain and spend that. We can't continue to push mandates down to cities without dollars.
That's right.
And the fact is, these small cities just cannot abide by these mandates that are coming down. And so we get a certain amount of funds, but we cannot be pushed to do more with the few dollars that we get. I testified in front of Congress around the Homeland Security reduction in the number of dollars that were being pushed out.
Yes.
The fact is, I'm dealing with an active shooter right now, even as I speak, in our city. Our first responders are there. We have to train them up so that they can evade those situations that are happening in cities. We've got to have more funding from the federal government to do the mandates that we've required our police department, small and large, to do.
Thank you, Chief. And then I'm going to go on to the next one. Go ahead. Thank you.
I just want to jump in real quick about the smaller
That
agencies.
bill provides you to use those burn funds for body cameras.
Yes.
And the truth is, the burn fund, that's the point. The burn fund recommendations and spending have been reduced every year since I've been the chief.
Right. And I am against it, and as you well know, we live in a divided house.
Yes, ma'am.
So I hope you all get the hint.
All right.
Thank you so very much. Yes, sir.
Real quick, just touching on the smaller agencies question, I think the bigger issue is, for example, in North Carolina, we have 504 different agencies, and that's over only 100 counties. So you do the math. If you're talking about truly being more effective and efficient and accountable, you need to reduce that number. You don't need 18,000 police agencies that you can't track, some of which are less than 20 people. So we got to put our egos in check and consolidate, because ultimately the taxpayer is paying for all of that. So it needs to be more effective and efficient.
Thank you. Let me, because I want to get to our last two, I don't want the room to be empty. Did anybody answer the small cities question?
Yeah. That's yes.
I'm
Yes.
sorry.
Just a little bit of
Yes.
that. Yes,
You
ma'am.
answered a little bit of that. We did the mental health national database. I said this legislation. And then private prisons. Let me just say the president wrote an executive order to stop the Federal Bureau of Prisons from using private prisons. Our next step is to work with the states to stop using private prisons. I have written legislation to treat private prisons the way others are treated, because many of you may not be aware they were not subject to the Freedom of Information Act, so you don't know if your loved one died, poisoned, you don't know what was going on. And so we think we are in a civilized nation such that, first of all, we need to be doing something to reduce the prison population, not getting them there in the first place, reducing the criminal system that draws them in, and therefore letting police really police those bad actors, while mentally challenged individuals, juveniles, and others that can be saved, Yes. So that we are working with that. And I see my guardian friend down, he wants to say something. Yes, go right ahead.
There was also a question about prosecutors and judges that came up that I wanted to address.
Go right ahead, sir. You're absolutely right.
So the first thing that I want to address it on two levels. One is sort of the general role that these offices play in criminal justice, and then the second one would be where they come into play in terms of adjudicating police shootings. So on the broader side of it, I have become a pretty firm believer that actually the prosecutor is the key to stemming the tide of mass incarceration and of actually turning it around. I don't know if anyone in this room is familiar with the work of Adam Foss. He's a prosecutor who was actually in Boston for some time, but he's now left the district attorney's office there and starting his own organization that's trying to teach young line prosecutors. So one of the things a lot of people don't understand is that, like in a small town you might have, the one prosecutor. In cities you have assistant prosecutors who are handling the entire caseload of what's criminal trials that are coming before them. They're often in their mid to late 20s, early 30s, out of law school, and they get sort of minimal training on how to best. Ultimately, what prosecutors are trying to do is change behavior. You're trying to change the behavior in your community in such a way that it becomes a safe, productive place for people to live. They don't teach you that in law school. So, these are exceptionally bright, talented young people who can, talk to you about the intricacies of all of these different cases, but they don't necessarily have a structure of thinking, when a defendant comes in front of them, what is the best thing for my community? Rather, they have a whole bunch of precedent that's been set that goes back to, maybe to the war on drugs, maybe to these moments in time where we were less thoughtful about how we were using our criminal justice system, this very blunt instrument. And so, the talk about mandatory minimums is super important, but mandatory minimums don't constrain prosecutors, they constrain judges. Prosecutors can charge you with whatever crime that they want. If you steal 20 of something, they can charge you with 20 crimes, they can charge you with 1 crime. They can use the criminal code to try to enforce something that is in the spirit of the law rather than the letter of the law. And so asking prosecutors, asking district attorneys to think more creatively and more responsibly about how they use their power, and to be more progressive in the use of their power is absolutely one of the strongest steps that we can take, because it doesn't require an act of Congress, which at this point feels almost like an act of God, to change the way that they're going to be doing it. Individual prosecutors can just start doing it tomorrow.
Let me say that you're right on point. Let me thank you so very much, and I'm hoping we come to a day in America where the actions of the members of the United States Congress for good, meaning drawing the two distinct major parties together around goodness, will not be beyond our reach and imagination. But I thank you for that challenge. Chief, I'm going to give you 1 second, and I'm going to give Catherine 1 second, and I got these other two, and I don't want folk to empty the room, to give dignity to this little girl that's going to say a word for us, and then my dear friend Senecal to give us inspiration. Chief, go right ahead.
Just one quick point around accreditations nationally. Less than 1% of all our 18,000 agencies are nationally accredited.
That is right.
And when you start talking about how you build towards that, it's pretty significant in our spending on how you get that done. So if there are funding available so that agencies can reach national accreditation, that's what we should be pushing toward.
The major chief needs to get on this legislation, Law Enforcement Trust and Integrity Act, even to the extent, let me make sure that I get the copies to both of you, the working draft, so that you can see that is what we're trying to do. And we're trying to move toward the idea that if you've got one person that's an officer and you call it a police department, they've got to be accredited. And I don't know if Professor Ramirez, we are looking to adopt one of her theories, and that is guardian versus warrior. And I think the two chiefs would accept that. That has nothing to do with whether or not they go home to their families. We want them to. But that training aspect and the level of educational accomplishment, not trying to deny anyone who's pulled themselves up by the bootstraps, really helps set a different tone. And then we in society, non-officers, non-military, we've got to come halfway. We've got to have resources for these individuals, not when they get 39, but when they're 2 years old, or 9 years old, or 14 years old, so that we don't create the pathway. Now, one thing we didn't highlight, this gentleman, that's what accreditation does, deals with how you interact with the community, police-community relationships, and even though we have batted that term around, sir, and it looks like it's old, when you have police-community oriented policing, and my former chief and my friend, former Commissioner Chief Lee P. Brown, the former mayor of the city of Houston, the father of community-oriented policing, began to teach these young guys here that if you got storefronts or people out in the neighborhood or walking the beat, it makes a difference. These neighborhood people will hug the police officer. The police officer will play ball with the kids. Some of us grew up, even in segregated America, reaching our hand to a police officer because that's what we thought they were as children. We got to get it on because we have got to be able to not be empty-handed and stop all these nickel and dime local governments, federal governments, nickel and diming our children and everything else. We got to stop it so that they don't get over here. Let me shout out the names of the panelists and thank them for my intrusions into their orderliness that they wanted to do, but I am consumed with this. I'm delighted that we got, I believe, one of the best panels here in the 2016 Annual Legislative Conference. They know what they're talking about. Samuel, give Samuel a very big hand. Samuel, please. Give him a very big hand. Samuel, where's that last name from?
Tanzania.
Tanzania, give him another big hand, all right? Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you so very much. Chief Kara Putney, give him a big hand. Charlotte Mecklenburg, Police Department. Chief George N. Turner, give him a big hand. Kelvin Anderson, another big hand. Professor Kimberly Williams Crenshaw. Deborah, Professor Ramirez. I love the policy one, the beautiful analyst, the wonderful author, Washington Post. Madam Kelly, give her a big hand. We're going to be using her up, I can tell you that. And we've got Brother Jamiles Larty, he's on the way back, but give him a very big hand. Yeah. Catherine, 1 second, please.
I just wanted to
Stay in
say,
your seats if you might. You're ready for a treat. I see you with a hat. Get something to eat and then stay in your seat. Thank you. She's going on. Go ahead, Catherine.
okay, I just wanted to say quickly, while we're doing the data collection, I can make life real easy that can add in all of this with when it does come down to the sexual abuse, because on any given day I have 2,700 human trafficking victims and survivors and prostitutes that I rehabilitate, and they come from all over the country, right there in Houston, Texas. And the sexual assaults, mental illness, all of this that even happens inside the police force, the actions between putting the bracelets on and trying to get them off the street into the jail, and what goes on in the back of those police cars, people never talk about it. I got hardcore factual data, and me and you, we need to be right here.
We're going to hook you up. We're going to get you with Professor Ramirez, Professor Crenshaw, Crystal Williams right over here, so that you can create a dialogue. We're going to get your, as they say, get your stuff in the right place where it should be. Ayanna, please come. I got 1 minute, and you may go over a little bit, but you give her a very big hand. We're proud of her. So panelists don't leave, audience don't leave. They're going to be moving things out, but we have a minute, so please don't leave. Let me give, even though you're tall enough, just get this mic here so they can see you better. Okay, sweetie? There you go. Speak loudly. Give her a very big hand.
Thank you. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much, Congresswoman Sheila Jackson-Lee, for allowing me to speak today. This is so amazing. And I just want to start off. Oh, thank you. Okay. Bear with me 1 second. Okay. So, my name is Ayani Pradia, as you all know. I'm an anti-bullying activist. Thank you. Thank you. It is my will and my duty to be the voice for the children that are lost and the children who are here, who are being bullied. Bullying is something that I went through in my life, and it's something that's very hard to go through. Goodness, okay. We need an observance day for the children who have lost their lives. They know not what they truly have done, taking their lives, not being able to be here anymore to live through what they should have been here for. We have lost people who would have been mothers, fathers, lawyers, doctors, Congress members, maybe even presidents. And, you know, we don't even know who they could have been, and they didn't know who they could have been because no one wanted to listen to them and hear what they had to say. And if people would just take a moment to listen to what we have to say, I know you're thinking she's very young. You know, a lot of people say, what does she know? But you don't have to be old to know what's wrong is wrong, and bullying is wrong. Did you know that 5,000 kids commit suicide every year just over cyberbullying? That's not in schools. That's not outside of schools. That's not with family members. That is cyberbullying on their computer and on their phone, because people are calling them ugly, stupid, and all these things. And that is because no one ever listens to us, because we're 13, we are 15, we are 12. That should not matter. That does not matter. We are people too. We are people too. Listen to us, because there are so many things that we go through a day-to-day basis. I was bullied by my teacher. Do you know how that feels? There are children out there who have been through way worse than I have, and it is horrible. So we need something in place that says that there will be consequences for the things that people have said to us. So I thank you all very, very much for letting me speak today. Thank you. And that is Publius. Thank you.
Madam Kelly, the Washington Post, can you do this for me? Can you interview? Can you get Your data wonking on this bullying. I've got, my bill is anti-bullying and prevention, but here's a living story. Police officers come upon suicide cases. They're the ones that show up afterwards, their heart is broken, and I'm sure they get called for ugly bullying cases. Can we get in the middle of it so they don't have this and we don't have this, okay? Thank you so very, very much. Thank you. Let me now, this is about network. Please take a moment now. I'm going to bring to you, who's going to close us out. Don't shut the sound off, brother, because you're doing something here. I don't know what you're doing. Senecal, motivational, political activist, rapper. You panelists, hold 1 second, hold 1 second, hold 1 second. He's not going to be, he is a Emmy-nominated producer, artist, writer. He has a big heart. He has evolved into a lyrical, socially conscious artist, and he's not afraid to tackle the issues that plague us today. He's been here all day. He's listened to you in the wake of all of these issues of police brutality, shootings, the conscious rapper created the video Panthers, sampling the melody of designers, etc. Come on up, Unicorn. Where do you want to perform from? Where are you? Right in front of you. All right, you got it together. Oh, you got yourself all together. Ladies and gentlemen, Senecal! And thank you very much for being here. Oh, you putting it down? Is it working? Oh, hold it. Okay. Thank you. Chief from North Carolina, only.
People to bring their guns.
He was really nothing but an antisocial gangster.
He is a sort of gangster, you know, because this is a gangster story, but a gangster with a difference, because this is a gangster with a conscience, a conscience.
The Panthers exhorted people to violence. In the initial announcements, when they were announcing the Huey Newton rally, they exhorted people to bring their guns. He was really nothing but an antisocial gangster.
He is a sort of gangster, you know, because this is a gangster story, but a gangster with a difference, because this is a gangster with a conscience, a conscience, a conscience, a conscience.
I let everybody talk on this. See, I go by the name of Senecal. I'm talking that same talk, though. Thank you, Congressman Sheila, for having me. It's time for a change. I'd like to welcome y'all to the World of Conscious Track. Can I get my music up, please? I got fear in the slim, not telling no answers. Doing time for a crime he didn't commit, now that's bananas. Dragons, pandas, anonymous move like a fan. Please put down the bandanas, like on black crimes of cancer. Dragons, pandas, anonymous, families, they telling lies, saying the new code, nanas. The jizzle for house with no tanners, filling with people that's tan. Police shootings on camera, that's Black Lives Matter. Everything on the news, people abuse, the blue, against crews, use different views, so my hands up in costumes. We're killing with not dying, we're running with losing with crying. America's history slide, treating our protests like riots. It don't matter if you claim they being saved, the principle of law. We see us for one and the same, and that's why we're slaying it straight to the bar. But some of our people don't get it, and some of our people don't get it. Yes, our people, the ignorance, skill, is president people. Why? Say the revolution will be televised, fully televised. This is food for thought. After this meal, we don't get the ice. I'm not saying I'm the most righteous, ain't saying I'm the most kind, but somebody gotta bring light to this dark. We in the crisis. I got fear in the slim, not telling no answers. Doing time for a crime he didn't commit, now that is bananas. Dragons, pandas, anonymous move like a fan. Please put down the bandanas, like on black crimes of cancer. Dragons, pandas, anonymous, families, they telling lies, saying the new code, nanas. The jizzle for house with no tanners, filling with people that's tan. Police shootings on camera, that's Black Lives Matter. I say Black Lives, y'all say mad. Black Lives, Black Lives. I say Black Lives, y'all
as you leave, you will take my words that I said in the beginning. Let us not leave for another annual conference if God spares us all in 2017. Let us leave with a charge and a challenge to find those leaders in our community, from police leadership, community leadership, local government leadership, and prosecutors, judges, and all. And let's turn this system upside down for the good. We can't do it if you go home to your house and look at the next incident of which you want to get mad rather than busy. So let's get busy. And one of the things that I want to really emphasize is that our mental health system is not crumbling, it is collapsed. And there are people in need that we are not serving, and we call these individuals to come, and they come, and the chiefs will admit, not trained, because we haven't given them any funding or resources to do what they need to do. So you got to fight these folks that want a nickel and dime government, not using your tax dollars the way they should, which is to invest in saving lives. As Senecal has put the kids on the street, the rappers and all are looking at us. They are our today's and our future. And we have heard from Ayanna. I'm now even more motivated for the terrible loss of life of children that are bullied. We got a lot on our plate. A lot of it deals with the criminal justice system, and we must not continue injustice. We must do as Martin's message in the Birmingham jail, the letter, where there are unmoral laws, where things are not right. Get busy. Get busy. In the spirit of the United States military, get it done. Get it done, everybody. Bye-bye.
You may have a picture after that.
I don't, but if you have a card, I will write my information. Okay. Be sure to answer your question. Okay. I'm gonna write. Oh, okay. Where's this? Here's your. It's right there. Okay. Okay. Can you call me? I'm gonna give you my number.